Chapter 6. My first time comes back to haunt me. I first met a girl named, let's call her Renee, at Hampton Public School. I thought she was cute and she had a couple of friends. Well, I guess I thought they were cute too. I was about 13 going on 14 and was starting to grow my hair just a little to try and be like my rock idols. I certainly had no real style and I wasn't a cool kid by any means. I was kind of on the smaller side and still very much a boy at that age. In school, I earned the nickname Farmer because one of the few things I had to wear was a set of denim overalls, and I guess I wore them pretty regularly. Renee was a young woman, and to steal a quote from Wayne's World, she gave me that funny feeling like when you climb the rope in gym class. She had told me she thought I was cute once or twice, but I sort of just curled up and turned red. I was shy, and I didn't know what all that was about yet. But one day I decided to comb my growing hair back, part it in the middle, so it would hopefully look kind of feathered back, like what most of the kids were doing in the 80s. When I walked into school that morning, Renee let out a shriek. "Oh, Fred, your hair looks so good like that," like I was a beetle. I can't say I've ever had that happen before. But being shy and no experience with even talking to girls, I didn't know where to begin with a girl, let alone a budding young woman with a bomb figure who would beat me to puberty. So I just smiled and walked away. I didn't even say thank you. And I let her walk away with her friends giggling. What a jerk. You'd think I'd at least try and walk her home from school or something. But I guess I was just living in my little boy mind otherwise, focused on drawing pictures, jumping my bike off ramps, and skateboarding. As time passed, we went on to Voorhees High School, which I attended for a few months. I'm not sure if Renee went to Voorhees High School. She may have. It was definitely a big school, but I don't remember ever seeing her there. Still in my early teens, somehow I'd become reacquainted with her, most likely being around the grammar school yard somewhere around during the summer. My friend Ron and I would visit her at her house sometimes with her parents actually home. This was not normally the case for me, but her parents were kind of nice and didn't treat us like hoodlums that some other parents did, and rightly so. We would just hang out like friends do. Sometimes Renee's cousin from upstate would come down to visit her and tag along. Myself and a few other friends got to know Renee's cousin just a little, and Boober had the biggest, maddest crush on her. So bad that if he knew she was around, he would run up to Renee's house on the down low so none of us potential cock-blockers would follow. One day, I happened to be home, looking out my front door that gave a clear view of the road, straight up the hill. I noticed a truck starting down the hill towards my house. As it got closer, it looked like Renee's mother's truck. It was, and Renee was driving it. It was a total surprise, being we were both too young to drive, legally. She stopped right in front of my place, beeped the horn. She came to get me. Awesome. I was game for anything that was delinquent. She scored some major cool points with me that day. I was always up for a joyride. We drove around for a while, down to Asbury, hit some back roads, and had a great time. God, I have to admit, back in those days, it was nice not to give a shit about anything and just live in the moment. The kind of fun that only teenagers can have. We went to her house, and no one was home, so my first order of business was to get to the liquor cabinet. No, don't go in there, she cried for fear of getting in trouble. For God's sakes, we're out joyriding your mother's truck, and you're afraid of a little more trouble? Didn't make sense to me. I told her, don't worry, I'll show you how not to get caught. Look here, standard procedure. Check for any lines drawn on the bottles that parents may have made to mark the amount of liquor that was last in the bottle. Then check for the upside-down mark trick. Some parents tried to outsmart us by turning the bottle upside down and then marking the amount. So you had to be on the lookout for that too. Only well-trained technicians knew this kind of stuff. Other than that, just make sure the bottles go right back where they were, the labels facing the same way, and don't put too big of a dent in any one bottle at once. Now, got any music? We might have gotten maybe a few shots out of some bottles before risking her parents noticing some missing. While at her house, nothing too serious happened. We were on the couch, we kissed. After that, we got together once in a while, whether it be behaving badly at one of our houses while the parents were away or hanging out a little here and there. But one day, I was home alone. Renee came to my house. We kissed, and I took her into my bedroom. I locked the door. The Rolling Stones' Greatest Hits was playing on an old 8-track radio that I had hooked up on top of my bureau. It was my first time. Of course, I was ignorant to protection so no one gets pregnant. It somehow didn't seem important. Also, it was still a time when AIDS was not really something suburban kids had to be careful of. It just happened. I think it was her first time too, although she said it wasn't. We laid there listening to my 8-track tapes for a while. One of those things I'll never forget. I guess you can't forget your first time. Lo and behold, my face cleared up. It was true. Your face really does clear up once you've had sex. It lasted for days. Hell, why did I wait this long? A little time went on, and it wasn't long before Renee wasn't around at all. Life just seemed to go on, and I didn't really know much, other than some friends of hers told me she moved to upstate New York. Now, we weren't really like boyfriend and girlfriend, so it wasn't like I deserved to know anything. And when I was a kid, I had no character. I had no real concern of much at all, especially when it came to girls. I never had a phone in my house, and in those days there certainly weren't any cell phones, no Facebook, not even MySpace yet. So when someone moved away, they really moved away. Life went on, time went on, and I never gave it much thought really after that. Fast forward to the year 2011, I had a brief stint on Facebook in which I was able to say hello to all these faces from teenhood and my childhood, and it was fantastic to see how everyone was doing. One of the things that really caught my attention was there were even a few couples that were an item as we were kids and wound up going the long haul, now married with their own families. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. One face that popped up was a girl named Patty. We were classmates. She was a really nice girl from what I remembered, although we didn't know each other very well when we were kids. She was a drop-dead gorgeous redhead who I would have been too shy to talk to outside of a hello in passing. So we chatted a little on Facebook, and I wanted to take her out for a bite to eat, meet up, and have a nice time, which we did. Patty had arranged for another couple to come along with us. I said, cool, that's great. It turned out to be Renee's younger sister, who I remembered very well and was happy to see, and I met her husband as well. We had a fun time at a restaurant bar in Clinton, New Jersey, a town I had not been to in many years. Patty told me about her career and things. We talked about some old faces and places. It was a real pleasure and a genuinely nice time. Inevitably, I asked Renee's sister how Renee was. I told her what I remembered about her moving upstate when we were kids and never seeing or hearing from her after that. She said Renee was doing well, still lived in New York, and started to tell me the story of how she moved upstate all those years ago. As it turned out, Renee had gotten pregnant when we were kids. She, and I guess her parents, decided she was going to New York to live with her grandmother, if I remember correctly, and that she was going to have the child. It was a daughter. Surprisingly, nothing rang a bell with me while we were talking in the restaurant. I really believe her sister had innocently told me the story without knowing there was a connection. I think. We all talked about some other things, had our meal, a drink or two, said goodnight, and I told him how nice it was to catch up. I walked Patty to her car and said goodnight. I gave her a hug and a kiss on the cheek and started on my way home. A minute or two into my drive, I suddenly choked and tensed up. Complete, absolute shock. I just realized the story I was told. How it all happened and why Renee moved away. Holy no. Yes. It made perfect sense. I couldn't think. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I couldn't sleep all night. The next day I tried to go through the motions at work with my mind in complete turmoil. I hadn't been home from the Middle East for all that long, and I was still wound up inside, so any reaction I had to anything, especially anger, fear, anything that shoots up the heart rate, was magnified and through the roof. So I couldn't take it anymore. The loss of sleep, the wondering and the worrying about the whole thing. Could it really be possible? Well, yeah. I was hesitant to start reaching out because I was also thinking, am I overreacting? Am I jumping to conclusions? Am I nuts? Finally, that was it. I contacted Patty via Facebook on my phone. I tried not to freak out, but I did. I was coming apart at the seams and absolutely breaking down. I told Patty to please let Renee's sister know I need Renee's phone number. Before long, Renee was on the other end of the phone. The sound of her voice, I couldn't be reserved about it. I asked her straight away, is it true? Her voice was stressed and crumbling. She replied, I don't know. What the hell do you mean you don't know? From that moment on, I could have been much better about it, but I wasn't. All I could think of was how wrong this whole situation was. How could I even not know? It didn't seem fair somehow. That's just how I felt. I couldn't help it, and I told her so. She was running out of things to say, and she finally caved in. She told me she knew this day would come. You knew this day would come. Wow. My fucking God. Now, admittedly, one thing I have always had a problem with was to be cool sometimes when you need to. And I wish I had been, but I wasn't. And to be even a little more pushy right off the bat, Renee told me something about her boyfriend not liking my calling or something, and I said he just needed to shut the fuck up. And I want some goddamn answers. Nice approach. She said that she had better go for now and she would call me back later. In the meantime, I searched frantically for her on Facebook. I found her and I saw her daughter right there in front of my face, plain as day. Almost 30 years old, and I could see some of my characteristics in her face. I did the calendar math on my fingers just to try and make sure I wasn't completely off my rocker again, and she was on the spot. There wasn't a doubt in my mind. I was absolutely floored and frozen. Renee, to her credit, did keep her word and she called me back. She went back to telling me she just didn't know, but I did. Now somehow I at least had the sense to think ahead enough and ask if there was a father figure in her life. Apparently there wasn't. After a while, I grew tired of it, and I told Renee just to give me her daughter's number so I can bypass all this runaround shit I've been hearing. So she actually gave me the number, and I called. Lo and behold, she answered. I took her voice in for a moment and just said, "Hi, I'm Fred." What else could I say? I told her I'm an old friend of your mother's, and I wanted to ask, how are you? She said she was fine, and I asked her about her children, and she told me a little. At some point, I came out with it. I'm just going to say it. I might be your father. She was silent, and I was silent. I told her that I was sorry that this was something just coming at her like this. I briefly told her a little about myself, how I knew her mother, and touched upon her mother, Renee, moving upstate when we were kids. At that point, she said almost nothing. Understandably. I told her that I have 2 sons of my own. She seemed interested and said, "You mean I might have 2 brothers out there that I've never met?" I replied that I guessed that would be the case. It was a lot to throw out in a phone call, but I also said, as casually as possible, "Before we hang up, can I just say that I really want to talk to you again, and I hope we can become friends?" She agreed, and we would say goodbye for now. From there, I would just try and take it in, and I hope she did too. That was the only time I've ever spoken with her, regardless of my attempts to try and reach out to her. That was 7 years ago. My best guess, and probably pretty accurate, is that Renee soon intervened and told her daughter to just ignore me. Certainly, there must be some strong reason that a girl would just ignore a guy claiming to be her father. She had probably told her that this guy is just some crackpot and not to give it a second thought. I really don't know what she was told, and I don't know what she's been told. I asked Renee to talk to me, please, and help me, because now I'm the one who has to toss and turn every night while you just sing la-di-da every day for the rest of your life. I also asked her, could we please approach the situation on the same team? The furthest I really got from her was, she told me, "I don't know. Look at your kids, though. Your kids are skinny," as in a comparison to her daughter. Oh boy, I guess that's a pretty good example of what kind of playing field we're on here. Only recently I've had some kind of contact with Renee, and I promised not to freak out, and I would just be cool and hopefully slowly approach the situation rationally. But unfortunately now what we have is her being in a position of power over the whole thing. Playing the gatekeeper. I don't know, maybe life hasn't been too good to her, I'm not sure. But she seemed to get quite a lift out of having someone in a position of asking her for help, and all she has to do is tell her daughter that I'm a nut and to ignore me. Also, I would imagine by keeping the truth from being found out, Renee doesn't have to face her own wrongs and the lies she's been living for over 30 years. If she were to just outright come clean now, there would be a lot of explaining to do, and she's afraid of that. The last thing that I had to say to her was that I was convinced she is evil and manipulative. At this point, I'm done. If she's my daughter, I'll find out on my own. Some way, somehow. When we were kids, that's one thing. We were just kids, and it would be silly of me to point fingers as far as what happened then. But at some point through adulthood, there must have been a notion, somewhere along the line, to come clean about it, and what's right is right. Do I think I'm right? Yes. Is there a slim chance I'm wrong? I have to say yes. But either way, it is possible to get to the bottom of it at a lab visit that would take a matter of minutes, and I would gladly foot the bill for. If you're out there, and I know you are, let's do it. I'm not hard to contact, and I'm not hard to find. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry for all this, but please try and understand the situation and that I had to know. If I'm right, then I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. It was not in my control, and I knew nothing of you until recent years. I know I can't be your father, be there for your birthdays, teach you right from wrong. It's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life, just like you. But it's not too late for being someone good in your life, someone you can know, and I'll try my best.